Welcome back to Stone and Signal. I'm Lawrence Snow. This episode is different. It's slower, softer, a breath drawn in and held. We've wandered, you and I, through stories of collapse and resilience, through old myths, forgotten futures, and the strange shapes of survival. But today, I want to set those stories down for a while, to step aside from narrative and dwell in the language beneath language, the rhythm behind the words, the space between the phrases, the quiet pulse that remains when everything else is stripped away. Poetry. There are moments when the world begins to outpace us, when the noise, the speed, the pressure of it all makes it hard to think, let alone speak. Lately, those moments come more often, boosted by machines that accelerate our exhaustion, by timelines that never sleep, by algorithms that shout louder with each scroll until silence itself feels like an act of rebellion. It's like being caught in a breath, trapped in that moment before exhale, the air gone thin, the noise thick around you. But poetry doesn't ask for volume. It asks for stillness. It doesn't demand your attention, it invites it. And in that invitation, there's a kind of sanctuary. Today, I'll share a handful of my poems. Some come from my collection, Fragments of Frost and Fire. Others are new, written in the small hours, in frost-hung silence, or beside the slow ember glow of grief. They're fragments, really, of memory, of wonder, of resistance. A handful of signals I've sent out over the years, hoping they might land in someone else's quiet. And together I hope they form a kind of weather, a climate of attention, a brief clearing in the noise, a signal cast quietly into the world, meant not to be decoded, but simply received. Poetry has always felt elemental to me, not just in theme, but in nature. It doesn't announce itself with answers. It doesn't try to win an argument. It just is. A flicker, a breath, a signal from something older than language. It's not performance. It's not meant to convince. It's meant to resonate, to strike a chord inside you that you didn't know was waiting to be struck. Sometimes it comes like smoke, rising from something smoldering far beneath the surface. A memory, a question, a grief not yet named. Other times it comes cold, sharp, bracing, a sudden clarity that startles you awake and shows you the frost etching your window was trying to speak all along. There are poems I wrote years ago that still feel like strangers. They show up in old notebooks or tucked into margins, and I don't recognize the voice. But something in the shape of them still rings true. And then there are those I barely remember writing, scribbled in the margins of exhaustion or awe. But they carry truths I didn't know I needed until I heard them read aloud years later. Poetry has music to it, but it's not always a melody you can hum. It's kind of a private soundtrack, and you, the listener, are the only one who can hear it clearly. The rhythm will be different for each of us. The silence will land in different places. Because poetry, to be understood, must be experienced, not just heard, and certainly not explained. Your mind has to wander through it, to climb the hills, to sit still in the fog, to follow the curve of its strange shoreline. Sometimes a single line will open something inside you, a door, a memory, a scar. And sometimes nothing will happen. Not right away, but the words will stay with you, waiting, sifting through the dust for a place to root. So I invite you to listen, not just to the words, but to the spaces between them. Let them breathe, let them echo, let them be what they are: a signal, a fire, a frost, and something that endures in the quiet. The deeper I sink into the life of a hermit, a recluse, a writer, the more I find myself engaging with the world through ideas, not through presence. These ideas don't always arrive fully formed. They come in fragments, in twilight hours, in dreams I half remember. These fragments arrive when the world goes quiet. Sometimes they become stories. Sometimes they become poems. Worlds between worlds. I've lived my life, many lives, in the twilight. Not that space between day and night when the sun escapes over the horizon and the moon shuffles to its nightly observation post, but the space between my eyelids, blocking out the day, preparing to transition me from one world to the next, from the world of the living to the world of the subconscious. The twilight is the world that exists between those. It is the world in which I have so many lives. A rancher, a recluse, a holy man, a hermit, a lover, a fighter, a man of power, a man of means, an immortal, a lost soul. That world was real, where I lived lifetimes in minutes and minutes and hours. As a rancher, the foothills were my playground, the snow-peaked mountains my backdrop to the mighty horses, the shires that roamed my range, worked my land, and graced me with their presence. Massive creatures with an understanding of me, I strive to gain of them. As a recluse and a hermit, the mountains and forests were the walls that protected me from the world, and the world from me. Through my words, scrawled with pen and paper in tomes of thoughts and stories, unbound to my appearance or presentation, reached the world, inciting change in the world and in people. As an immortal, I never aged, and I lived more lives than I can dream, some hiding in the need of respite, some among the mortals, some just wishing death could find me. As a lover, I loved many, often, emotionally, physically. That love taking many forms, described by Plato and Aristotle, in Buddhist teachings and Bhakti tradition and Sufi poetry. In the Kama Sutra, the perfume garden, the Shimpo, and the golden lotus. But always, in the end, alone. I spoke with life from other worlds, creatures that set me here to observe me like a rat in a maze, to use me as a tool for change, to empower me as a weapon of mass destruction and mass development. Their constant chatter ringing in my ears during the day, translated in conversation in that twilight. I stopped wars and saved lives, but I took some too. I lived in wealth and poverty, freedom and confinement, giving and begging, with a roof over my head and just the sky as my roof. But always, in all lives, alone. Even with and among others, alone. That twilight, the world between worlds, is my reality for a brief time, until sleep pulls me away into the realm of dreams and nightmares, then spits me out into the reality I cannot change, but that forces changes in me as I long for the worlds of my twilight again. There's a quiet war each of us wages, one that doesn't make headlines, doesn't ask permission, and never stops advancing. It's the war between life and time. We fight it not with weapons, but with breath, memory, love, and the stubborn will to keep going, despite the creaks in our bones or the silver in our hair. This next poem is about that battle. It's about facing the slow siege of aging with courage, with humor, and with an unshakable sense of self. I wrote it not as a lament, but as a rallying cry, a kind of whispered oath to the part of us that refuses to surrender. It's called The Unending War, Life versus Time. I stand at dawn upon this weathered ridge, my banner raised against the coming tide. Time's armies gather in the distant mist, as I, life's champion, prepare to ride. They say no mortal ever wins this war, yet here I stand defiant to the last. My armor gleams with hope still unfilled, my sword still sharp despite the battles past. Time sends its scouts, a strand of silver hair, a deeper line etched near my watchful eye. Small victories, I scoff and raise my helm, though somewhere deep I recognize the lie. The skirmishes cut deeper through the years, a knee that aches before the coming rain, the memory that flickers, dims, and fades, quick breaths where once stamina unfeigned. Time fights with patience, never charging straight. It lays the quiet siege around my walls. The mirror shows the ground that I have lost. Each morning's muster, fewer soldiers call. My joints now crack like armor poorly oiled. My bones protest at tasks once lightly done. I yield no quarter, still I boldly claim. While time just smiles, the long game has begun. By night I fortify with stubborn dreams. By day I counterattack with fierce delight. I celebrate each moment as it comes, each breath of victory in this endless fight. The hills I climbed with ease in bygone days, now seem like mountains, steep and never ending. My body, once my ally, now betrays with limits, weaknesses, and slower mending. In this defeat, I whisper to the dark. No voice replies, just breath and memory. But something stirs. The self I used to be still answers. Time can wound, but not erase. To beauty, love, to wisdom dearly earned, the spoils of battle time cannot reclaim. What matters most lies deep beyond its reach, the essence of your spirit and your name. So on we fight, time's armies and my soul, a war of attrition playing out each day. It claims its victories in flesh and bone, ingrained temples, strength that slips away. But in this uneven contest, strange to tell, I find a truth that glimmers like a blade. Though time will win the final reckoning, 'tis how we fight that makes us unafraid. For time can count its trophies all it wants, the suppleness of youth, the careful stride, yet cannot touch the fire that burns within, the heart's defiance, stubborn, dignified. So let time come with all its silent force. I stand unbowed, though battle scarred and worn. Each day I face its vast array. Each night I rest, prepared for the war at dawn. And in the end, when time makes its final claim, when breath departs and silence claims its due, remember this: I fought with all I had and lived each moment fierce and burning true. Not all poems need to be solemn. This one surprised me, like finding wildflowers growing in a ruin. Sometimes we resist despair by laughing or by remembering beauty. It's simply called Herc. Giants aren't supposed to dance, but nobody told this to Herc. Massive Shire horse, 18 hands high, hooves like dinner plates, mane flowing like a midnight waterfall, built for plowing fields and pulling carts, but secretly dreaming of ballet. Watch him now, dew still on the grass, his enormous body suddenly weightless, defying physics with glee. Look at me, he seems to say, as he prances sideways, neck arched, tail flagged high, like a victory banner. Sheer delight in all that horse flesh, the way his eyes bug out when he spots a butterfly, the ground shaking buck and twist at the sight of a plastic bag. Ridiculous on a beast so grand. His whinny like rusting gates opening into sunshine. He gallops circles around his field, each lap faster than the last. Legs like tree trunks, somehow suddenly graceful as gazelles, only to stop, snort, paw the earth, then collapse in a rolling frenzy. Four dinner plate hooves waving skyward, coating his noble bulk in pasture confetti. Oh, to love your body that completely. The farm dog barks, the chickens scatter, the farmer's children double over in helpless giggles as Herc, the gentle giant, celebrates the miracle of being alive. In his paddock cathedral, he preaches joy without words, converts everyone to laughter, teaches us the ridiculous wisdom of half-ton creatures who forgot they're supposed to be dignified. Thundering happiness that rattles the barn walls and shakes loose whatever seriousness we foolishly cling to. We live in a world that's increasingly hostile to slowness. Everything is optimized, quantified, filtered for speed and scale. Our days are measured in clicks and scrolls. Our attention sliced thin by algorithms designed not to nourish, but to consume. Poetry clashes with this. It resists the metrics. It refuses to be flattened into content or converted into data. Poetry lingers. It's inconvenient. It sits with us in the aftermath, after the feed goes dark, after the meeting ends, after the noise dies down. It says, here, feel this, even if you don't understand it, even if it hurts. Poetry doesn't chase virility. It doesn't trend, but it remains like a breath held in the chest, like the echo of something you didn't know you needed to hear. And in a world obsessed with momentum, that stillness, that presence, is an act of quiet defiance. Thank you for listening today, for making space for stillness, for trusting the quiet to mean something. If any of these poems spoke to you, I hope you'll carry them for a while. Let them settle. Let them echo. You can find more of my poetry in fragments of frost and fire on my blog, or tucked between the lines of my stories. And if you'd like to support this work, my books are available wherever books are sold. Every purchase helps keep this podcast and this quiet space alive. Until next time, may your signal find the stones that remember.